a quorum of our TAC members. It looks like there's a couple of additional um, TAC members that I'm expecting should be joining us, but haven't yet, but hopefully they'll join here in the next few minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our final scheduled TAC meeting. If you can believe that, we've been going for 2 years, really, and we're going to hear today about sort of what the plan is or could be for year three. But definitely lots of good work behind us and lots of good work ahead of us. So, Bam, if you want to go to the next slide. Today, we're going to start with sort of our standard housekeeping stuff, and then we'll move into discussions and some presentations from OHA folks. We've got Rachel and Joan and Nathan teed up to provide us some information from the OHA NEMT team. And I think we have at least a few other NEMT project team folks that are on or will be on sometime during the discussion, just sort of listen in and provide additional information as necessary, but really to sort of hear from you all. So we'll start with really looking at the major recommendations that the TAC has made over the past couple of years, and look at sort of what the status is for those major areas that could be, things like early on around OERs and stuff that have been implemented. There's a number of sort of policy recommendations that you all have made over the past couple of years that OHA will be able to provide us some more information about sort of the status of those, what the plan is, and to the extent that it's possible to sort of project the timelines for working on those areas. So the next thing that we'll talk about is looking at TAC Year 3. So in our last meeting, we had some really good conversation from you all about recommendations, about ways that you think that the TAC work and really around sort of this NEMT quality improvement work can continue. And so we'll hear from OHA folks about sort of their ideas and plans for how to continue that effort. And then we'll have some time at the end of those two areas for some roundtable discussion. And this really is just intended to be pretty open-ended in terms of things that you all are thinking about, that you want to talk about, that you have questions about, anything like that's fair game. And then we'll wrap up and discuss any next steps. So that is sort of at a high level the plan for today. Go ahead to the next slide, Bambi. So just as a reminder, at this point, this is a virtual forum really intended to generate quality improvement recommendations for Oregon's NEMT system. And in order to do that, TAC members have been and need to continue to be sort of flexible. This content's guided by you all. Open, honest, and humble. There's a lot of expertise in the room, and we definitely grow by hearing these different perspectives. And I think sometimes, we agree with them. Sometimes we might disagree with them. Sometimes people's experience is different than ours. All of those things are really valuable. And the way that we can benefit most from that is if you all are engaged in our conversations about this and ask questions of one another, provide examples or counterpoints or those types of things as we engage in these conversations. Next slide. So in terms of Microsoft Teams logistics, just as a reminder, when you're able to, if you can have your webcams on, it's great to create this sort of virtual space, but would ask that you mute your microphones unless you're speaking, just to make sure that we don't get feedback and crosstalk so that we can all hear one another. You can use the raise hand function to either share information or ask a question. That's the best way to make sure that I see that you have something that you want to say. You can also add information and questions to the chat, and we'll try to attend to those comments and questions as well, and address those as we have time. If you're having technical issues with the teams, if you can send a message to Bambi. Bambi is the technical person that's helping us with these Teams meetings. And then again, just participate and collaborate and engage. We do have a number of members of the public here, and I would ask each of you if you would keep your cameras and microphones turned off for the duration of the session. Then TAC members will be able to have that open dialogue and conversation that we're wanting. And then just final reminder here on the NEMT TAC webpage, all of the materials, recordings, meeting summaries, presentation slides, all of the things that you see at each of the meetings go up on that web page as a resource. So we have all of those things from the last 2 years up on that web page, and within a couple of weeks we should have today's information and materials uploaded to that site as well. All right, so we are going to get started here with Rachel and Joan to talk about TAC improvement recommendations. Again, these are the recommendations that you all have made in our conversations here with OHA in the audience, submitted formal recommendations on a number of topics and areas that we worked through to get good sort of agreement and sign off across TAC members. And so Rachel and Joan are going to talk about sort of what's the status on those, what are the plans with those, which of those is OHA looking to implement, which are maybe not feasible, those types of things, and where they're looking to do some work on it, what the timelines are around that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Rachel, and you can take it away.
Nice. Show my screen just a moment.
And I don't know if it matters, but Bambi, if you wanted to take that down and then, yeah, okay, great.
There we go.
Great, thanks.
All right, so I will provide some brief transparency. We did have a lot of recommendations back from you all, which we greatly appreciate. I definitely don't want to say that none of them went unheard. We definitely have been crosswalking and building out our goals for the upcoming year, 2026, and of course, 2027, and then 2029, that rig procurement that we talked about recently. So what we're doing with this information is we're identifying essentially trends and observations that have been shared with us from the TAC to see how we can kind of incorporate those into our team goals and our operations and benefit goals, as well as agency goals. So I'm going to kind of start by presenting a little bit of information around how the TAC came to be, a little bit about the charter objective, talk about the scope, and then kind of some high level areas of focus that were discussed throughout year 2. So I will say that unfortunately I did not get to go too in depth with what I wanted to do. So my plan here is also to provide these slides with a lot more detail when I did have a chance to get those over to David. Unfortunately, we did have some priorities that we had to kind of put first due to some situations. So I do apologize for the incompleteness, but I will say that we can definitely talk more about it verbally as well. And then, like I said, we'll be providing some details to once those slides are presented to everybody. So first things, just wanted to kind of bring us back to that TAC charter objective. So really, what is the Technical Advisory Committee here for? It's really to help improve that timely accessibility, quality, and cultural and linguistic responsiveness for NEMT and our OHP members. So we're really focusing on making sure that we're centering equity, we're improving our access, compliance, and the overall member experience. Within here too, of course, we're considering at all times how this affects everyone that touches and works within NEMT at the CCO, NEMT brokerage level, OHA, drivers, providers, medical providers as well. So It's all about assessing how we can get to the best benefit that we can offer for everybody. This is probably really tiny, but try to fit as much information as possible from the charter scope. So really the 5 pillars that we were focusing here for year 2 was those recommendations and requirements. So getting that feedback from you all on what you're seeing, what you're experiencing, what's working well, what's not working well, and really how do we process and improve upon that? And then how do we also operationalize that? So again, how do we take this feedback as OHA and incorporate it into our, again, agency and our team goals and better improve this benefit for all folks who need to access it. So, we identified things around language, especially, was a huge point of conversation for us, as well as accessibility for folks, making sure the right vehicles and right folks are getting sent the level of transport that they need, and accountability. So making sure that we've got software and technology that's working best for the benefits, and figuring out ways that we can talk to each other within these different technology spaces to make sure that we're being efficient, being concise and compliant as well between OJ and CMS. We also talked about policy recommendations. So this could be things like the NEMT structure. The way that we've done it for a long time is there are brokerages assigned to certain areas of Oregon, and they support those members that need those transportation benefits. But things that we can just discuss is does a one brokerage operation make sense? Some folks have kind of divided that work into different spaces. So it's really about coming together and providing that feedback for us to really help improve the benefit. And also pilot and test recommendations. So we've had the TNC pilot going for a while as an example, which is our transportation network companies. And that is really assessing for OHA, are we going to be able to utilize kind of an alternative form of transportation, and what would that look like? So, for example, experimenting with what we're calling recovery rides and seeing if folks, can get picked up if they've missed a trip, and can get picked up by a TNC that can help them get there a little bit quicker than previously. Is going to help improve with no-shows and things like that. So, pilot and test recommendations also came from the TAC. So we did have some agenda topics that were identified at the beginning of the TAC year to really, again, give us areas of focus and where we could hear from you all what is, again, working, what could be improved upon, or, shooting for those hopes and dreams, go for the stars, go big or go home, so to speak. What can we really see what we can do to make this the best benefit that we can offer our members? So in January, I talked a little bit about grievance and appeals and language access in March, improvements in member accessibility and understanding. So a lot about education and training for folks. And then we talked a little bit about the NEMT and CCO procurement, what that looks like for contracting and such in the years to come. So our last meeting. So I'm going to jump a little into kind of those areas of focus, and I broke these down again by trends and kind of different buckets that I saw were kind of repeated in different places. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of a high level overview on these, but again, these are directly recommendations and feedback that we received from the TAC. So for example, there was an ask to include an ombudsman in OHA to provide folks a little bit better understanding of navigating the grievance and appeals process, making sure that those solutions are being resolved for, that members understand what is really being asked, and is it possible to actually provide that ask to the member. So we are due currently work with our ombuds team and the transportation team. We actually have standing meetings in which we can attend and provide feedback or hear from the ombudsman of their concerns and grievances that they have in navigating with members. So we're going to continue to obviously do that work throughout the year, and then continue through 2029, of course, and even past that. So the work with the ombudsman is never going to be stopping, that's for sure. But definitely identifying with them better ways to support members and understanding the grievance and appeals process is going to be work that we'll be focusing on in the years to come. So don't get discouraged as well if you see some none at this time and to be determined for our timelines and our actions. These are things that we are taking into consideration. It's not something we're saying, no, we can't do. This is more speaking to there are other priorities that we're going to have to kind of put first before we put that cart behind it. So got to put that horse first, so to speak. So this one in particular was about developing a peer support program. And again, the reason that we're kind of putting this on a pause is just because in general, the grievance and appeals work that needs to kind of come before this, such as working with ombuds, working with the CCOs so they have good understanding of how to provide guidance to the member, why something is either denied or cannot be offered, like a service modification. So we'll have to really get those things kind of in place before we could identify a peer support program that we could offer to members. So again, don't get discouraged. We're not saying no. It's still going to be an opportunity to help improve, but there are actions that we do have to kind of take first in that space. So another recommendation we have is, of course, to encourage CCOs to utilize care coordination to really help members as well to navigate the benefit. We are definitely working with our QA department internally at OHA to identify process improvement for CCOs to be able to really help with those grievance and appeals process. This could look like, of course, integrating our care coordination folks into this. Since a lot of them do work so closely with the members, it would be nice that they could have that education and understanding to best also support the member through it. So we will continue to work on that and integrate it into our 2027 contract and rule changes that we've got planned. Because again, we want to be able to support folks as much as we can, really to understand sometimes a very complex benefit. All right, so the continuation of feedback we heard was also integrating community health workers into providing support for members to advocate in filing grievances and appeals to better understand the NEMT benefit. Again, we don't have anything necessarily planned at this time for community health workers. Our thought process really is, again, to get the internal teams that can best support the members, like CCOs, OHA, and care coordination, and of course our ombudsman, to really have their best understanding first, and then we could work on expanding into some possible community health worker support.
Hey, Rachel,
Mhm.
if I can butt in here for just a second. So we've had a couple of our TAC members having a little bit of a hard time to join, and we just had someone dial in with the number ending in 09, and I just wanted to check and see who that is.
Joel Sovereign.
Hey, Joel, I'm glad you could get on at least via phone.
Yeah,
Welcome.
sorry about that.
No worries. Thanks a lot. All right, go ahead, Rachel. Sorry about that.
That's okay. All right, so we have some more about grievance and appeals and improving communication and transparency. So one of OHA's mission and goals is to provide as best that we can, of course, communication and transparency about all sorts of changes that we're looking to implement and provide. So again, we've got some requests around an online portal for folks that can help track their grievances and appeals. This is something that does really interest OHA that we want to move forward. We haven't taken any actions necessarily at this time to really focus on specifically an online portal, but this is something that we would like to identify with the possibilities of doing for fee for service for OHA and for CCOs to help, again, provide some better insight for members to see where those grievances and appeals lie. Unfortunately, I don't have a timeline at this time, but I am going to say we're probably going to be looking at this course once there are those internal understandings first, and clarity and supports in place, and then we can look at process improving with those possibilities of having an online portal for folks to be able to track that. Also, and the suggestions we've received were around targeting outreach for members who don't have mailing address, phones, or digital access. So we know our members sometimes don't have a lot of access points or sometimes don't have any. So really working together with the CCOs to identify like how do we, provide outreach to folks in these spaces, where can we find connections? We're trying to reach them on an old phone number, doesn't work, or they might have moved and haven't updated their address. This is something I could see that we could work with our folks within care coordination and possibly even clinics to identify, if you see this person, please identify that they need to update their information to best ensure that they're getting their NEMT benefit. So there's lots of opportunities to work all across different spaces. So even perhaps drivers, if they do connect with a member and we've been trying to reach them for an updated phone number, having notes in places that could really help identify that to the driver so they can work with the member to getting connected back to us. And then regular trainings. So definitely training is something that we are doing a lot of already. Currently what we do is offer what's called a TA session or technical advice. So this could range from everything from, going over some data points to talking about rules and interpretation of those rules, policy, to make sure that, again, those benefit needs are being upheld and those contractual agreements are being met. So we offer those on an ongoing basis. They're kind of ad hoc at this time when either CCOs or OJ does pass for that to happen with brokerages. So we currently do work very close with that, but we always know that there's room for improvement when it comes to education and training. So we are going to be starting some joint meetings between OJ and the CCOs to start next month. And we'll be discussing a lot of different topics, including such as training and education for internal brokerage staff, as well as, offering to members that support to for training opportunities. So lots of work to be done there and looking at definitely trying to pull that into the 2027 space. That was something we saw a lot of responses on from you all, was that training and understanding. So another area was about member-specific transport needs. So identifying really level of screening, what's appropriate for the member as far as a level of service. So as we should all know here, NEMT offers 3 levels of service essentially, which is mileage reimbursement, bus pass, or monthly bus pass, or driver provided ride. So OJ has noticed trends, of course, that there is not a universal screening process between brokerages, and that is something we definitely want to get into a little bit closer with the fee-for-service and CCO brokerages, and really find a way to make sure that we're having folks screen appropriately for the level of services that they can access and that they need, and finding a way to have that consistency across the board. So this is something that we currently have in process right now that we're trying to develop what that will look like and a possible pilot process to come down the line too. We are also working with some bilingual and culturally specific driver companies. So we've been introduced to a few folks that do offer kind of beyond your standard scope for NEMT. And they really helped us understand, what other opportunities do we have out there to support our members culturally and, of course, linguistically. So we are in the process of that. We also have something called the CLSS expansion. So that's cultural language, and forget the 2 S's, of course. But essentially it's speaking to how do we integrate different benefits. So everything from physical health, behavioral health, dental, and NEMT into cultural linguistic needs. So it's been a little bit of a slow process, but it's something that we're going to kind of first focus on. I'll talk a little bit more about this in our year 3 plans of how kind of we look to really dive into this space. So again, this kind of goes into that language access. So finding those multilingual and culturally appropriate NEMT clearance support, including ASL. We have not really taken a lot of actions in that space yet, but we are, again, as we're going to talk about, development of those TAC affinity groups, scoping for additional software or agencies who can support that need. So more education and trainings. So members, looking to get more of an annual comprehensive writer guide. There's of course something we're working internally with QA of OHA, and really making sure that members are well informed around this benefit. So that can also include, of course, some opportunities, like a lot of technical advances of having that insight to real-time procedures and what's happening with vehicles and things like that. Some videos and educational trainings, as well as some simplification of our processes around denial notices and making sure that claim language is processed. So this all coming to me is, again, falling into the education and training opportunities. So looking at opportunities, again, for that screening process, and having better informed members around education of the benefit. So I do apologize. This is where, unfortunately, I did have to take a pause on work we were hopping in. So I will expand upon this a little bit more verbally, and of course, we'll add answers before these slides get put out for everybody. So again, the training around strengthening oversight and accountability. So requiring brokerages to submit quarterly reporting to OHA that really dives into the detailing of grievance trends, resolutions, and issues that continue to show. So identifying those patterns and such. So this is something that has currently been in action with, again, the OHA transportation and quality assurance departments. We're looking at past and current reporting to really identify, of course, any duplication that we can streamline to more of just one report, not having it broken up between different reports. And really, again, that allows us to really deep dive into how can we improve upon this? How can we make sure that members have a good understanding of why something is denied? If it's just being provided an OAR number and saying, I'm sorry, that's not something we can do for you, that doesn't really provide a resolution or understanding for folks. So we want to make sure that, again, we're looking at those grievances, we're finding those trends in the kiosk as well, to make sure that folks really understand what's being asked of them or what's being informed to them. So this will be ongoing from now until forever, I'm sure. And this will, of course, be space that we'll talk a little bit more in year 3 and how to improve upon this too. So with that data and feedback, of course, that we want to make sure that the CCOs and brokerages are being held accountable for what's expected and required of them. So that will be all taken into effect with developing those trends and identify them and providing that feedback to the brokerages and the CCOs so they best know how to support the members as well. Audits, everyone's favorite thing. So definitely have ongoing audits currently, and we'll continue till I'm sure the end of time. So really, providing a little bit more specific guidance for any of the brokerages and CCOs to understand what's being asked of them for these audits, and why it's important and how it ties into the work they're doing. And more data collection and quality assurance. So this is really about making sure that everyone's got the same information being provided to OHA from the CCOs and the brokerages. We're going to utilize that information as OHA and really identify again how those those situations are popping up, those trends are popping up in different areas. So, there's quite a difference between the rural area of Oregon and the metro area. So looking at those trends in more specific services and areas that they cover. And then, of course, making sure that we're tracking that information. And then, of course, there's the request to add a public dashboard. So I think that's in the to be determined space of, we'll get those first things kind of tackled with making sure that people have a good understanding. We've got best practices put in place. We've got policy. We've got rules and contracts needs kind of taken care of. And then we can look at expanding that transparency into online spaces too. So that's a lot of information. I am going to pause there for a second because from there we kind of move into future state year 3 and what we're doing with this information and how we want to move this forward as a top group.
Are there any questions for Rachel in terms of anything she covered, anything or they covered, anything they didn't cover, anything like that? So let's go ahead and start with George.
Yeah, 2 questions. One, what is TA and what is health worker? You're on mute.
I just did that. Sure, George. So TA is technical assistance. So that's what we offer to as OHA to the brokerages and to the CCOs to help interpret rules or provide guidance if they're, feeling like they don't know how to move a situation forward because the rule is kind of gray or is not, explicit. So they are looking to us to provide some insight to that. Or it could be in regards to data, we're making sure that we're receiving accurate data from them. And if we have questions, in regards to metrics that might not be being met, we can get together with the CCO to really talk through that and see what could possibly be the disconnect or, clarification that might be needed for that. And then the community health worker is going to be folks that can support the member that are outside of the care coordination space. They're going to be more in your in kind of community benefit organizations, so your non-traditional health areas. So, for example, this could be like Asian health and services. So they're not necessarily providing, your standard medical care, but they're providing social care as well as overall needs for a member. Does that help a little bit, George?
It does, but I'm still trying to visualize the health worker as to how they're coming in.
So there was an ask to really integrate them into helping support members around navigating the benefit and understanding the grievance and appeals process. So essentially the ask was to add another layer of support for folks that they can go to be able to navigate this benefit.
And this is coming from OHA?
These are recommendations that we received from you all at the TAC.
Okay.
George, I think, and Rachel, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was around that peer supports, right? So looking at peer supports, people with lived experience, that sort of thing, who fall into this community health worker, traditional health worker category.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. All right, Tim.
Yes. In regards to the audits, we have actually had the pleasure of going through an OHA audit here recently, and unfortunately, it wasn't a positive experience for us. We were outreached kind of without any kind of discussion or anything, sent a couple files, given a due date. I requested a meeting to go through the audit information. And what I got was a phone call, about a 15-20 minute phone call. It's frustrating to not know the type of data that's being requested, how they want the data. Literally, it's just a list of names and months that they want, no context. And so as a broker, it's really difficult for me because we assume that they want everything. So we do a really thorough job of pulling as many records as possible, but may not know. So anyway, I would just encourage you to refine that process so that it's a little more collaborative, to where there's a meeting where you discuss the audit and the intent and the type of data that is needed, and any questions, and then go from there, versus just having an email come to you with attached files.
Absolutely, Tim. I appreciate that feedback as well. I think that's something that we've experienced for a while, especially since a lot of times we use external auditors. And so I think it'd be a nice suggestion to include ourselves in those conversations with the auditors, just to make sure that all folks understand and we're speaking the same language. Since again, as we all know, NEMT is very nebulous and has a lot of moving parts that are not your standard medical review audit. So
Thank you.
All right, let's go next to Leslie.
Yeah, I just wanted to address this to George. Yeah, I'm a community health worker by training. So from my perspective, this has nothing to do with OHA or ALK or anything. But my perspective is we help connect people to resources and then walk them through whatever they need help with. If they need help getting food, then we help them walk through with those resources. But please, George, feel free to contact me anytime, and I can give you whatever info I'm able to get.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Ellen. Want to go ahead, Ellen? Ellen, I think everyone probably knows Ellen, but from the OHA Ombuds office. Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, Ellen Finney, Principal Ombuds. Also responding to Tim. Tim, I am on the Joint Audits Committee. It is not part of Oregon Health Authority or DHS. It's separate from both of us. I just finished my term. We don't know in advance as members of the committee what the audits committee is going to audit. But if you wanted to send me your hopes for how an audit might happen for you or anybody else in the future, I'd be happy to carry those recommendations forward to the audits committee. These are professional auditors and anybody can recommend topics for them to audit. I don't know where this recommendation came from. I was aware that they were auditing it, and I think you raised some really good points. And I think it would be good for the audits committee to hear from somebody who was audited. So my term just ended. My fellow ombuds, Libby Raskin, has taken my place on the audits committee on behalf of the ombuds team. I will make sure that the right folks get whatever you want to send me, Tim, and I know you know how to reach me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ellen. Other comments or questions for Rachel on the document and the information that they shared? All right. Also want to welcome Kathy. Glad, Kathy, that you were able to join us. Yeah.
One more, Rachel. With the contracts that's going to be in 2029, how bad will it affect the contracts with all the CCOs? Or will it affect it at all? Of them being underneath these new things that they now have to follow?
Can you elaborate a little bit more for me, George?
Yeah, they had to add another 2 years onto their contract this year, and for them to negotiate the contract. 2029 is when they're beginning the new contract, as I understand. With these things that are going to be put into place for consumers and what you presented, how much of effect will it have on the CCO and their contracts? Really bad? Is it medium? Is it going to be?
I mean, you always hope that it's not going to be bad. You always want to make sure that we're implementing, requests and policy that is going to make sure that this is successful for everybody that utilizes it. So, I would hope that we're not going to go for bad, that we're going to go for good. But of course, with policy and rule change and all those things, there's a long road to get those things into effect, which includes a lot of feedback, both from the CCOs, members, and providers. There's open space to receive questions when we do rule changes and policy changes and things like that. So there'll be lots of feedback being provided to us ongoing as we move this work forward. So the hope, of course, is that we're not surprising the CCOs, that they are well informed of why we're making this change or why we're asking to make this change. And they're giving us their constructive criticism and feedback to say, this does look like it's going to work better. This is, what are your plans on implementing that and operationalizing it? And then they give us feedback on that and suggest options too. So it's a real open space to make sure that we are, again, implementing things that are going to be successful and don't necessarily look great on paper, but actually work and function.
I want to tell you kudos on your work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, George, if I might ask sort of that question back to you in terms of, is there anything that you're seeing on sort of the list of TAC recommendations that Rachel went over that you're seeing as would likely be or could be a heavy lift for the CCOs or for the brokerages? Anything jumping out at you?
I like the idea of what's going on. I'm just concerned that too much heavy weight may have some of the CCOs say, we don't want to do this. There's 16 CCOs, and one in Josephine County almost not made it last year. Or not last year, but the beginning of the 5-year contract. I'm just concerned that the one in Josephine County may just say, we don't want to do this.
And I appreciate those thoughts too. And I want to definitely stress something that we take in consideration as well as change fatigue. So, when looking at this time span of current to the space where we get for the 2029 contracts and re-procurement, we really want to make sure that, again, we are implementing things and moving towards things in a pace that hopefully isn't causing folks' heads to spin and feeling, of course, overwhelmed. So, as we work through this, as we talk through it with everybody, again, it's making sure that this feels like something that is achievable. We don't want to, again, introduce something that is going to hinder people's access to success. So again, getting all the feedback from here in the TAC and continuation of those TAC meetings, getting feedback from our CCOs and our brokerages, from the public, those are all things that are going to help us really weigh out, again, is this something that makes sense to move forward now? Or is it something that we need to maybe push out a little bit longer because it's going to cause too big of a lift for the CCOs to accomplish?
Well, like I said, I like what's going on.
Great, thank you.
But within the 16 CCOs, may see maybe one or two that may just push back.
And we'll definitely hear that as well. We want to, again, receive the good with the bad and the ugly. We don't always want to just push forward if something is not going to work for somebody. We want to make sure we know why and how we can possibly approach it in a way that, again, is going to get them to being successful. Again, CCOs do have the right to continue involvement with OHA if they so choose. but we're not going to strong arm anybody into a contract agreement that isn't something that they feel like they can be successful in. So.
Okay.
The other thing I would point out is sort of that TAC charter that Rachel went over at the start of their presentation, and really, this is a focus. Like our work here, your work here, has had a focus on sort of the OHP member experience, and these are ways that primarily that can improve that OHP member experience. And so, if there is a need for improvement, and it's a costly, the ideas that have been put together so far are a costly way of implementing it. Um, then I think OHA policy staff and CCOs and others will need to work together to sort of figure out how do you achieve that goal of improving the OHP member experience while making it manageable and sustainable for those who are implementing it. So I know for sure that that's a focus all the time of the policy work that OHA is doing and that CCOs are collaborating on and brokerages and stuff. But I think it's definitely a good reminder, George, and I think that one that really needs to stay centered.
Absolutely. Well put, David. And I think something to add to that as well is, there is an opportunity in spaces that we can always consider, is this something that OHA can finance, or is this something that we're asking the CCOs to finance? So, a prime example, which we'll talk a lot about, is that language access piece and making and ensuring that drivers have an ability to communicate with their members that are in the vehicle, be it a need for a different language or ASL, and what does that look like? So if that included, purchasing of software or technology, that might be something that's determined, within the OHA budget to provide, if it's something we're asking across the board for every CCO and brokerage to implement, or, is this something that we can work into their contract, in which they would pay for a portion, whatever that might look like. But there is opportunity where, again, we aren't necessarily putting all this ask for financing from the CCO to make that change as well.
Great. George, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, there is one piece of this that I hope to help you put together on this. I know OHA wants to have this Uber and links. How is that going to hold? And with what you're doing, I am curious.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, and I think David probably can as well. So we currently have the TNC pilot happening currently. And so we started essentially April 1st of this year of working with Uber and Lyft primarily. And we've got a few brokerages and CCOs involved in this work. And so what we're kind of doing here now is tracking the data points to see if it's helping improve, again, no shows, missed appointments, late to appointments, driver competency, network adequacy, all those fine data points that are really going to help us identify if this temporary pilot is something that we extend permanently. So we're looking at all the different aspects of what that might look like. If it's, utilizing them as something we would call just recovery. So again, picking up those members who maybe missed their first ride or didn't connect with the driver for whatever reason, or if it looks like something that we integrate into the network to start with. So nothing that we've identified quite yet. We're still in the process of holding that pilot and gathering that information. So it's really going to help us inform, again, is this something that's going to help improve the benefit, or is this something that are we not seeing like that metric really move for our no-shows or members missing their appointments? And that, will help us inform if that's something we add in permanently and what that looks like.
Yeah, and I would just, I mean, I think Rachel covered it. I think that the questions that you're asking, George, are really the questions that the pilot is asking too. It's like, as if you have this additional resource in the NEMT transportation system, does it improve the OHP member experience? Are they able to get rides to medical appointments in ways that they weren't able to get them? And are we still achieving all of the same or better sort of outcomes in terms of quality and cost and experience? So the pilot will tell us that hopefully, and then we can look at sort of how do you, if it looks positive, how do you implement that in such a way that it can be done in sort of a permanent fashion that maintains sort of those areas that I just mentioned, that quality and access and experience and cost. So I want to, Joel, I know you're connected via phone, so it's hard for you to raise your hand. It's also, I'm sure, hard since you weren't able to see the slides, but I just want to make sure that we're also giving you some space if you had questions or comments.
No questions or comments at this time.
Okay.
Everything seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, I can't see the slides, which is the hardest part, but yeah, I mean, as far as the overall engagement, I don't have any additional comments at this point.
Okay, super. Thanks, Joel.
Thanks.
All right. So Rachel, anything else on this topic, or where did you want to go next in terms of this one or moving to Tech Year 3?
Yeah, I think we're good to move into Tech Year 3, and um, I'll let Nathan do kind of the introduction. I'll go into more of the nitty gritty, so to speak. And what I've heard back from you all, I know I wasn't in the tech meeting where this was discussed, but I was able to review notes and the video that was recorded to be able to kind of provide a timeline of what I think would be successful moving forward. So with that, I'll probably let Nathan go ahead and introduce it, and we'll go into the meat of it after that.
Yeah, thank you, TAC members. Thank you so much for allowing me some time. I am Nathan Roberts. I'm with the Oregon Health Authority. I'm a manager in the Medicaid policy team. Rachel and Joan are analysts on my team that report up to me. Several other areas of Medicaid policy are also under me, and I have analysts working on those areas. I first of all want to express a tremendous gratitude for the TAC and for your service for 2 years now. Particularly want to thank you for your tenacity, your staying power, if you will, your continued sustained engagement with us. I think that one of the features of government that you're encountering is that everything moves very slowly. I think that's helps us to do the right things. Hopefully, that government is it's a pretty awesome power if you think about it. Setting the policy that everyone in the state will have to follow, and so I think that the slow and careful approach is necessary. It's also frustrating, and I appreciate you for sustaining with us and working on these things. I really appreciate it. I was thinking I wouldn't be able to listen to the opening part of the meeting, but I was able to, and I really appreciated the discussion. And I think it really highlights what I most appreciate about the TAC. I think that we're a small but mighty team on the state side, and the expertise that we can personally hold is going to be limited, right? We can't have all of the perspectives and all of the expertise that you all hold and have, and I think trying to operate in this space before we had a TAC to rely on was incredibly difficult. It's this won't surprise any of you. NEMT policy is extremely complicated, and if we work on an aspect that's very, very important for drivers, that we may mess things up for brokerages, or if we work on something that's really important for brokerages, we might jeopardize the CCO's ability to be financially stable, as you were expressing concern about, George. So we need every bit of your expertise and highly value it. And I am excited that we will be able to extend the TAC for a third year, and we will be soliciting and hope that all of you, or many of you, will be able to continue with us and sustain this engagement for a third year. We're definitely looking forward to continued engagement. The places where you have helped bring to our attention some things that we didn't have our eye on, that's been extremely helpful. The places where we've felt the pain and known about the frustration, but haven't been able to translate that into actionable steps, you've been able to help us move our plans forward towards much more actionable work. We're looking forward to that kind of digging in, turning the good ideas into more detailed and actionable plans as we're going forward. So that's the kind of work that we're hoping to engage you with, and the places where we're hoping to tap your expertise. Rachel and the team looked over the year 2 input, and we have focused the feedback that we've heard from you into 5 major areas that we would like to engage you with. So one of those being the language and cultural access for the NEMT members, for OHP members using NEMT services, so that we're appropriately supportive of language and cultural needs. We want to focus on NEMT accessibility, so that it's there when people need it, that we can support people for its main purpose, that it's there and people can get to their appointments. We want a focus on NEMT education and training for members, so that members understand what the benefit is, how to use it, what it can and cannot do. We want to focus on NEMT education and training for the many partners involved in addition to members. So our CCO, our brokerages, drivers, subcontractors, healthcare providers. So there's a better and broader understanding of the NEMT benefit. And then our last major area of focus that we'd like to engage with you is on NEMT technology. So again, just super heartfelt thanks. The OHA really appreciates your service and your staying power and sustained engagement with us. And I will, I think, turn it to Rachel to dig a little bit deeper into those topics.
Right. Thank you, Nathan. Always nice to have him here and see the work that we're doing, and not just hear it from me only. So appreciate you being able to join today. Year 3, so strategies, options, and ideas. So the first space I wanted to start us out in is providing this lovely slide that might look familiar to folks. So this was introduced when talking about the framework and how do we implement those contract changes and those rule changes. How does that work occur? So again, I wanted to provide this here to really give people an idea of how that moves along. So, we're developing that framework of what's effective, what are the goals that we're trying to reach within that time frame? How do we compile the information to be successful and what's actually needed? So again, that's where the tactability has provided a lot of historical information and experiences and stories from others that have been shared. And then we also, of course, look at data and other recommendations that come through from different avenues that aren't just necessarily the TAP. By analyzing that information, and then of course, we're starting to put that forward into what does that look like in changing those metrics or amending those rules or creating new rules and policy. How do we make that request or that new change into action? And then we start to involve engagement. So, like I spoke to, we have a lot of space when it comes to rule changes where we get feedback from others. We just happen to be a little bit special in the NEMT space because we have this wonderful TAC that we can, refer back to and get a lot of thoughts and ideas and how to improve the benefit. So once we actually get into the changes, that we open that up more to the public space to get that feedback. And then we're designing that plan. So again, how do we put this into operational work? And of course, the final step is simplifying it a lot more, but is really, again, putting out that information externally with memos and updates for folks to be in the know about those changes when those occur. So I just wanted to give that very full timeline of how that work works, so to speak. And then to Nathan's point, those areas of focus for NEMT in 2027 through 2029, what do we want to help improve upon? So language and federal access for NEMT members. We talked a little bit about the BIT framework in the rate procurement process. So that's basic interest topics is what BIT stands for. It's essentially an area that OJ has identified in its focus and improvements. So NEMT was one of those. And within that, the transportation team developed goals to work towards for that 2027 and 2029 goals and that rate procurement process. So that was incorporating all that wonderful feedback you gave us as well. So we're wanting to expand on creating a robust language access for in-transport and call center for member needs was our goal within that BIT framework. NEMT accessibility, so making sure members can receive same-day service, be it a ride, reimbursement, public transit access, etc., as frequently as possible. So again, really diving into those different areas and what is feasible and realistic, but of course, aiming for the best possible services that we can provide. Looking at 85% of NEMT rides pick up and drop off are on time. So again, looking at data, working with CCOs and brokerages to really identify if networks, have enough drivers and vehicles, or if there is concerns about long distance and things like that, how we have better access to the service benefit. So education and training for members, so members understanding access to the NEMT benefits. So that includes, again, there's training opportunities for folks, be it with OHA developing videos for online, or having, updated FAQs, frequently asked questions, so that folks can really get into the more specific questions they might have about the benefit. And then offering possibly things like town halls where folks can come and ask clarifying questions that aren't necessarily from the CCO or from the brokerage. So going into also training for partners, this can look like CCOs, brokerage staff, drivers, subcontractors, and medical providers. So looking at how we can proactively request transportation for folks who may be scheduled outside of the service area is something we're considering. And how we, make sure that CCOs are connecting with their internal utilization management teams that review those prior authorizations, or for us at OHA, who receive prior authorizations for fee for service, working with our NEMT brokerages to alert them ahead of time of these trips that might be a bit of a distance, to say the least, so that it's not left as an oversight. It's something that we're going to be working towards. And then also confirming eligibility for services and identifying that we can help, find that level of service that member is going to need to utilize for NEMT. So working with our different medical aspects that streamline that process when it comes to identifying a level of service that somebody needs to access. And technology, this is always one that I think NEMT kind of struggles with, is finding out how to utilize systems and the best availability, and making sure that not only does it work for basic needs of scheduling appointments, dispatching, reporting, and such, but that we as OHA have better insight to what people are utilizing and how we can help improve if need be for better access to technology. So I'm going to go a little into my proposed roadmap. So again, this was feedback and thoughts you all had that I gathered, interpreted from the last meeting's recording. So again, I'm looking for thoughts, or, if this isn't going to be successful, what might be a better way to kind of approach this. But I heard a lot from folks about affinity work groups. And so something I was trying to put into this kind of process roadmap. So again, let me know if this feels like too much, not enough. We can workshop this, of course, it's not set in stone yet. So my first thought process is our first TAC meeting picking back up in October. So TAC members and OHO will work together on development of how to integrate supportive software or agencies who can provide a high accuracy rate and list of translation services for both the call center and transport needs. So again, thinking that our main focus will be around language and cultural access. This will kind of be the first topic that we dive into as a large group with TAC. OHA will then provide, of course, information in regards to what's occurring currently internally. So I spoke a little bit to that cultural and language access expansion. So what does that mean? Where are we at with that? How is that going to work into this and be successful? And then what we'll do from there is identify the TAC members who are interested in specifically working on this topic together with OHA to have these affinity work groups. So from there, if folks are like, language and culture maybe is not my area, technology might be more my area where I want to provide that input too. So I'm going to sit this one out. That's totally okay. Again, we really want to have folks in these affinity spaces that are interested in seeing how they can make that change and hearing those real-time updates from OHA about what's happening and what's moving forward with this work. So of course, we'll be in the background at all times, continuing to adapt and operationalize and be able to showcase to you all when we come back what we're thinking of doing in those spaces, and hearing from you, that probably won't work. I don't see that being successful, or that sounds great. That'd be super helpful for members if we did that. So once we establish who's going to be part of that affinity group, we as OHA will go back and start looking at those OARs, those rules, and identifying where we can help either provide amendments or new rules too, and seeing how, again, we can support that language access need and cultural access need. And we'll take all of that and we'll come back to you all in that affinity group, thinking about meeting every 2 weeks. So that would give us about 3 groups that we can meet before the second TAC meeting occurs. So we would introduce as OHA those rule and policy changes. and see what the affinity group has to say about them, their insights, considerations, and then we'll develop an outline for specific actions and timelines to really help us stay accountable and be able to bring back to you what we've done with that information to move that forward. So then we'll start that official rulemaking process as OHA with the feedback that we received from the TAC, and we'll continue to identify what that looks like as operationalized work. And we'll come back again as that TAC affinity group in 2 weeks. Make sure that that timeline is being met, but again, we're holding ourselves accountable, or we're identifying if there's possibly roadblocks and why that's occurring, and what we can do to work through that if possible. We'll continue to edit and integrate public feedback into those organ administrative rules, and then start talking about best practices and operations for the policy around those rules. So again, really kind of getting into the weeds, so to speak, with this work to make sure that you all are well apprised and providing support to that. So again, there is probably steps 5.1 through 5.10 before we hit 6, which is more OHA, navigating behind the scenes and identifying anything additional before we come back for that work group 3. To again, hold ourselves accountable for that timeline and identifying if there's any additional process work or operational work that needs to happen. And then we will get back together for the second TAC meeting. And those folks that are working with the affinity group for language access and cultural access, OHA will discuss what's occurring with that, how it is moving forward. And then, of course, we'll continue those affinity group work groups until we've got those changes in place. But we will also introduce that new topic for that second TAC meeting to develop the next affinity groups as well. So I will take a deep breath there and ask folks to give some thoughts around how that looks, how that feels. Does this feel like it would be successful in meeting those things that you all mentioned in the last TAC meeting? Go ahead, George.
This process 1 through 7, are we only having 2 meetings in October and December, or is November included?
So we currently, for the TAC alignment, is every other month. So we would have the TAC meeting with the larger group in October to discuss the topic of language and cultural access, and then who wants to be involved in that, and what kind of things we're looking at changing in that space or trying to implement. And then there would be these smaller affinity groups, that those folks that do want to focus on that. We'd have about 3 meetings before we came back together as a larger group.
Okay. On your presentation on the one before this, if you back up on page 16, I think it is. With this BIT framework of goals, I will have to share that consumers are having, let's put it this way, hospitals are not being appraised as to the NEMT working around the clock. And consumers are afraid that if they get surgeries done and such, that they never will be able to get back home. That seems to be a problem. I think, in my opinion, that hospitals should be because when they come out of surgery or whatever, or coming out of their rooms, they're asking the hospitals, can you call my ride? Well, we don't know if we can call you a ride. They're giving in the consumer the responsibility to call the ride, when it's supposed to be the hospitals that are supposed to be calling the brokerages. And there's a lot of confusion there. of who's trying to do what or supposed to do what. And some providers close out shop at 5 p.m. Well, if they close up at 5 p.m., consumers are thinking, how am I going to get home?
Well, I think, and correct me if you're wrong, or if I'm wrong here, George. So I think what you're saying is making sure that we've got a space to, oh, am I interrupting you? I'm sorry, George. I wasn't sure if I was getting feedback or not. I think it was me. Okay. I think what you're speaking to is, the possibility of helping not only expand in the space for, NEMT education and training, or again, that kind of those provider spaces is something that we can focus on that, as well as I think too for accessibility. So making sure that folks again are getting picked up and dropped off within a timely manner is something that we can dive into that space with hospitals. When we look at starting the TAC 3.0 or year three back up, of course, we're going to look at the opportunity to have more folks involved in this space, not just from the subgroups that we have now currently. So that could look like hospital providers, that could look like clinic staff, et cetera, if that's something that they want to participate as a TAC member too. So there will be opportunities for folks in that space to be able to bring their experience as well and provide their feedback to make sure that we're meeting those metrics for them too.
Yeah, well, I don't know whose responsibility it is. I'm not sure. But I wanted to bring that up because, like I said, I've heard from some consumers afraid of not getting the ride home after surgery and not being aware of the NEMT providers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's definitely opportunities for improvement in that space, to say the least, for sure. And I think that is, again, something we can look at tackling in year three with either both the NEMT accessibility options or that education to help, inform all parties who utilize NEMT, be it a hospital or a brokerage driver, member, et cetera. So yeah, those will be kind of the topics that we'll be looking to dive in to help improve the benefit, and what kind of rule changes and policy changes do we need to put into effect to make sure that all folks, can utilize this benefit effectively. So I think this will definitely be some of that work that will kind of get into the minutia or the weeds, so to speak, to really improve upon it and make sure that folks have a good understanding.
Thanks.
Of course. Don, I saw your hand up too. Did you have a question still? Comment?
I saw JC.
Yeah, I think there we go. Yeah. Hey, John.
Hi. Yeah, no, I just wanted to echo George's concerns that there are oftentimes occasions with discharge planning from hospital stays, be it, just an inpatient or an outpatient kind of a setting, that there's some confusion on and difficulty getting rides back home. And as well as some coordination. I realize this next piece isn't in the wheelhouse of the NEMT framework, but also coordinating with caregivers to make sure that once they get home, they can get to bed.
So when Rachel kind of pointed this out too, but I do think that these types of things that are coming up here are exactly kinds of conversations that would happen in those affinity groups, right? So it's like looking at what's working, what's not working down at that sort of detailed level. And it makes perfect sense where Rachel plugged this in, right? It's really around sort of that education and coordination with members and providers, these particular topics. And there are lots more, I'm sure, that affinity group would want to sort of dig into, and like I said, figure out where those sort of pain points are, and what might be solutions to make those better for folks.
Yeah, it might also help to kind of preface that this example, again, is just specifically around that language and cultural access. This isn't the only area that we're going to focus on. On slide 15 and 16, those kind of high-level topics around education and training, also in accessibility, and also technology. So those are going to be our high-level topics, so to speak. And within those umbrellas, there's going to be a lot of, opportunities for amendments to rules, rule creation, policy creation, and changes, et cetera, that we can again figure out what's going to work for everyone the best it can. We want to make sure that, again, if we're going to change anything for members, that it's not going to necessarily affect poorly for a brokerage or a CCO in their processes as well. So it's going to be kind of those umbrella topics and then those affinity groups, as David spoke to, that we're going to really zero in on those changes that need to be made to make sure that folks are being held accountable, that they have a good understanding of this benefit and the nuances within it too. So this again is just an example of the language and cultural access, kind of what it would look like from start to finish, from what I gathered from your feedback. And then maybe from example, a meeting in December would be to provide that update to the bigger TAC group of what we've been working on, how it's been going, what's been successful. And then we would introduce a new topic, which would be, for example, back to the NEMT accessibility. That topic would start and we'd find new members, or the same as the folks that are part of that cultural and language access affinity groups, to be sharing again specifically on the topic around accessibility. So we would continue the work throughout the year in these work groups to make sure that all those things are moving forward, that we're seeing that goal being met. So and I thought is to break apart, to really dive into that work that interests you, that you want to be part of to make that change. And again, you don't have to participate in every single one of them. Participate in just one if you want, or maybe you just want to get the updates at the bigger TAC meeting. Things like that, we'll definitely we'll discuss more too, but definitely want to make sure that folks who are interested in year 3 are going to be ones that do have an interest in some of these areas. Go ahead, George.
Rachel and David, could I get a copy of this PowerPoint? That way I can have a better understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure that everybody gets access to this.
Thanks.
And George and others, once the materials are posted to the TAC website, Bambi will send out that sort of notice with the link so that you can go and get those. And Bambi does a great job in making sure that as soon as those are up, that she's sending out that link to you. So you don't have to go in and sort of look to see if the materials are up yet. As soon as they're up, you'll get that email from Bambi. Rachel, I just want to sort of make sure that we're all on the same page and sort of what this would look like in terms of sort of the primary meetings, and then sort of the affinity work groups in between the time. So this is it's intended to be sort of a restatement or summary of sort of what's on the slide here and what you talked about. And I want to make sure that folks are understanding it. So it sounds like as you go through the TAC year 3, we would continue to have sort of bi-monthly meetings, and in between each of those meetings, there would be these affinity work groups that would be working on specific topics over the course of that couple of months, with sort of this rapid sort of feedback loop, right? So you've got the affinity work group sort of coming together, having these detailed conversations, OHA project team or NEMT policy team sort of doing work in between those affinity group meetings to be responsive, to bring it, to gather additional information, to bring ideas, that sort of thing, to the next affinity work group, and sort of work back and forth over that sort of 2-month period, and then hopefully have some good sort of, if not solutions, at least like at that next sort of full TAC meeting, some detailed sort of proposals or ideas, or maybe it's even just like additional questions for the full TAC as maybe the affinity group or the OHA folks have run into sort of barriers or, just need more information. But the idea is sort of this sort of rapid cycle happening sort of in between meetings with these affinity groups. Is that right?
Yes, you got it perfect,
Okay.
David.
And then so like this one is really looking at sort of language access for this first, and then there would be sort of different topics in between for subsequent sort of between the full TAC meetings. Is that right?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So, any other questions about sort of the proposal? What's this looking like to to TAC members? Does this seem like um, reasonable in terms of the amount of time that you all were thinking? There's a lot of opportunity to provide input here. There's some obligation, obviously, if you are choosing to participate in like all of the affinity work groups in between those meetings, right? That could be a significant time obligation. But again, it's optional for you, it sounds like. So any thoughts about whether this, how is this resonating? How's this feeling to you all?
This is John. I think it looks reasonable.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Other thoughts or questions?
This looks great to me. But because just thinking about the scope of my work and its purpose, this fits right in. So I can definitely justify the extra time spending on the subgroups.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. All right. Great. So Rachel,
It
did
sounds
you
like
have...
a pretty...
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Joel, please.
Yeah, it sounds good. I mean, I don't know that I could fully participate in every subgroup, but it sounds like there's at least going to be some adequate time available for me to jump in and help out where I can when I can. But yeah, I mean, it all sounds good.
Great, thank you, Joel. So Rachel, I don't know if you're going here next, but one of the things that we heard from TAC members at the last meeting was sort of broadening sort of the opportunity for folks sort of beyond TAC members, right? So engaging some additional people. And so is there a space for that? And would that be at the affinity work groups or where might that occur if that's something you're envisioning?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, David. So that is something that we heard as well is, looking at the possibilities of bringing in folks that are maybe subject matter experts in that space, so to speak, or that may have high need to provide input, but aren't, folks that can necessarily really offer this amount of time to the support. So, they can come in to speak to, like George's example, hospital discharges. There could be an open option for folks from the hospital network to join and provide examples of what they're experiencing, and ways that they can, access current information versus also expanding on how we support them. So there'll definitely be opportunities that more so in those affinity work groups for those folks to be able to join, to provide that level of expertise or experience to that, to help us make those informed decisions, opportunities for change.
Okay. Great. All right. Rachel, anything else on this topic? Did you have one more slide, or is it?
I wanted to leave this up. I realized people can continue to react to it, but my last question was just questions and feedback.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. Right on. Okay, so definitely opportunity sort of in our roundtable discussion here, to sort of reflect back, ask questions on any of the things that we've covered today. But what I wanted to do is just sort of open up the floor in sort of an open-ended way, to see if there are sort of things on your mind that you want to talk about today. And then I want to start there so that, it's just open-ended. But then I have some things that a couple of sort of topic areas that I want you to think about, and then we can hit on those topics to the extent that those are of interest to you, or you have things that you want to share. But I wanted to start out with that sort of really open-ended piece, and just is there anything that any of the TAC members want to chime in about, talk about, with the time that we've had, recommendations that we've made, sort of looking forward, anything along those lines? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Well, I don't know. I am very disturbed about HR1 and how it's affecting a lot of services that are funded with Medicaid dollars, and I don't know how that's going to affect deliverables when you start designing programs. And so I'm very fearful how that translates to member experience. But so I don't know, the whole segment is probably shaking in its boots, and I don't know if there are specifics yet, if now analyses have been made to see how that bill will impact the NEMT programs, or do we just need to wait and see what funding streams look like and how the Oregon legislature reacts?
So I think what I would put out there, and then obviously Rachel and others from OHA can chime in as well. But I think that, as you're looking at, it's definitely the elephant in the room, right? There's lots of things, there's lots of impacts, and then there's lots of sort of potential and downstream impacts coming out of that. And I think some of those things are known, and many of them are not known. So I think when you're doing sort of policy work, you have to sort of stick with the knowns, and work in the system as it is right now, and then be ready, be agile, to sort of respond to things that become knowns as you move along. So I think it's like you acknowledge that it's there, but you really have the system that we have, and there's lots of opportunities to make improvements in the system that we have, and that's probably the focus, at least in the short term, I would say, for the NEMT work. So I don't know, Rachel, if you have additional thoughts or other thoughts.
Yeah, I think I would say, the health-related social needs and other benefits that definitely need feedback and support from members and public and such won't necessarily be something we do in this space, since this would be primarily focused on non-emergent medical transportation and improvements there. That to be said, I'm sure Ellen is still here. She might have jumped, but she could talk a little bit too. There's spaces in which then the public can provide feedback and thoughts. Oh, hey, Ellen. To things like HRSN and how to improve and things like that. So, you want to share a little bit, Ellen, around opportunities for public feedback for other benefits?
I would say two things about that. One, for folks who don't know what HRSN is, that's health related social needs. And there's, several different kinds now. Housing is the one the ombuds is sadly and terribly most familiar with right now, because people are being evicted, holding on to their letters, saying that they were awarded 6 months of housing, and they're having to stay on hold for 4 or 5 hours to get answers from their CCO. And it's interesting, I just have to say this here. It was called out to our attention that NEMT established standards for customer service call hold times, and that it might be a model for other parts of service delivery inside the Oregon Health Authority. There's a new committee being created next to a body called the Medicaid Advisory Committee. I think maybe some of you are familiar with it. It's called the Beneficiary Advisory Council. This is a new requirement by Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services that came down before the change in administration. But as far as we are understanding, this particular Beneficiary Advisory Council will stay, and it will be side by side with the Medicaid Advisory Committee, which is a federally required body for all states that have Medicaid programs, which is all states. Whether they've expanded it or not is a different question. At any rate, that would be a good body to go speak at and share your concerns. We as an ombuds program continue to believe, and it's why we will be continuing to meet with Rachel, that every time a client reaches out to the ombuds program or client services unit or their CCO or their NEMT broker with a concern, that's an engaged client. It needs to be logged. We need to look at those issues to make sure that they are being addressed. That's exactly what I see happening here. So Rachel, I don't know if you had anything else in mind, but that's what I would share.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
perfect. Yeah, I just want to make sure that folks know that there are opportunities out there in similar spaces, but of course that focus on different aspects of benefits beyond transportation. So yeah, thank you, Ellen.
And then there's also, George, just to jump in, I'm trying to think. Rachel always calls me, thank you, Rachel, to think about bigger things. There's also the CACs, right? The Community Advisory Councils. I think some of you are on those CACs. In my opinion, they should all be public. They should all be open to all members. They aren't now, but that's a piece that might get added to the next contract. Just saying, for those of you working in that space, hoping that gets there. Some CACs are really open, and it's a good place to kind of let your insights be known. Thank you, George.
Go ahead, George. Thanks, Ellen.
From my perspective and what I had been through, I had gone, and this is my first time I've ever had to do this. I was in a very large meeting, the biggest ever, with all states involved, CMS from Washington, D.C. And I could just hear the problems that all the states are having with the NEMT service. And comparing Oregon to the rest of the states, my opinion is what we're doing here is a lot better than the problems that other states are having. Other states are not realizing and trying to get things in perspective, and they can't do it. I'm glad that we're able to get together and do what we need to do here for the NEMT. there's brokerages that are just a mess in other states right now. Arizona being one, New York is another. I've heard Florida on the conference call just shattered with their brokerages down there.
Yeah. Thank you, George. It is a good place to be, right? Where you have work to do, but you have a good process and system in place to do that collaborative work. Tim.
So about a week ago, um, we had a federal officer show up at our door, inquiring about an individual potentially using the bus, and wanted to get information about whether or not they were part of a special program. And so for a bigger picture, I'm curious what OHA's take is on sharing that type of information, because I don't think this is going to be the only instance. And what we are expected to do as a brokerage, especially with the population that we transport, some of them being um, immigrants, and potentially what that looks like and what kind of discussions are happening at OHA at the OHA level, and if any of that information is going to get disseminated down to us.
That's a great series of questions, Tim. I'm sorry to hear that you've already had that experience, but I'm not surprised. That being said, Oregon is a sanctuary state. We do have the ability to protect each other in that space. I always err, even though folks might get loud, they might get demanding, that, we have to uphold HIPAA, of course, first and foremost, so we can't really confirm or deny if somebody is a member. If we don't have that authorization in place from somebody. We do have some talking points, of course, externally for folks who might be interested. I'll find that and provide that in the link. But I think that having a discussion with especially brokerages and CCOs on best practices, how to identify, what's a true warrant versus what's like a Homeland Security warrant. That's just kind of a general warrant that doesn't actually hold true. So we can definitely share support in that space as well, as we learn different things that come through too of what folks are experiencing. But I think the best, of course, practice is just not providing any information, regardless what they may say. They have the right to that information. We do not. We actually have pretty intensive training in regards to the sanctuary state status for Oregon Health Plan staff. So it was really refreshing, I will say, to experience that and learn that actually upholds. So that's something we can share with you as well, to make sure that you feel like you are well informed, to tell them no, not going to provide that information.
Sure. Thank you. And just really quick, just one more thing to add is that that a lot of transit agencies across Oregon are starting to feel the pinch of being in a sanctuary state. My agency included. We will be cutting services in September. We're going down to, I think we've got 14 or 17 routes. We're going down to 6 or 7. We're reducing our staff by 62. And I'm positive, and I've heard that there are other agencies that are also going to be experiencing that. And so just something to think about going forward, because all of these transit agencies also have bus pass programs and provide transportation for Medicaid members. And when those services start to get reduced, it makes it a lot harder for brokerages to meet that demand.
Thank you, Tim. Kathy?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's Tim, pretty scary. I've been working with my executive director looking at the Oregon Department of Justice site for the sanctuary law, there are model policies that are easily translated to a transit agency. Of course, the brokerage is going to have, the extra HIPAA laws, et cetera. But you can also ask one of the Department of Justice staff to come and speak to your staff and work with you on developing. Well, I'm not sure if they can work with you on developing a policy, but they can definitely share with you information like, what does a judicial warrant look like as opposed to the ICE warrants, which are not the warrants that one would need to enter a private space like an office space where staff is. So these are really important questions. I reached out to TriMet thinking that they'd be that they would have, with their legal team, they'd have something in place already. Sounds like they're not willing to stick their neck out, probably worried about their federal funding. But we are in a sanctuary state. So I don't know how much cover you can get. The FTA is all of the agreements for FDA funding require the organization to not only cooperate with ICE, which is against state law, but also to eliminate any DEI programs. And so if you have any DEI language in your policies, that sort of thing, which can be something like women, it covers, DEI covers just about everybody out there. So I'm struggling with this, and it's just really, it's good to know that there's already been some data that somebody has already come asking for data, and boy, I would really recommend, there's been a few who have broken the state law, and it's not, Oregon does have penalties, so it's probably not something that RVTD would want to do.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Other tech members, things on your mind that do you want to share as we're getting close to wrapping up here?
David?
Yeah, George?
Just for the record, I'll serve another year.
Say that again, George. Sorry.
I said for the record, I'll serve another year.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you, George. So I think a couple of things that for y'all to think about. And first, I wanted to say, how impressed I am with all of you and the work that you've done over the past couple of years in terms of making recommendations and being engaged and really thoughtful about all of those recommendations. It really is striking to me to see those sort of lined up on, slide after slide after slide that Rachel presented on. And I think that it really goes to the hard work that you all have done in putting those together. And I would also, so you should all give yourselves a pat on the back for that great work. And then I would also like to acknowledge sort of Rachel's ability to be able, and team, to be able to put that together in a way and create sort of those pillars or those focus areas for those recommendations and start to put together sort of a plan and a strategy on how OHA can work on those and work on making those a reality. So again, I think that you're in a good place and the team is in a really good place to continue to carry this work forward. So I'm really excited to see that. And then in terms of, it's just as we are getting ready to close out today, I wanted to sort of plug any of these areas that come to mind, and if there's anything else that you want to share today. So it's really looking at a few things. If there are sort of areas, policy development areas that you would be the highest priority for you to work on sort of over the over the next year, it would be helpful to hear about those. So, and I'm thinking in terms of sort of this affinity group process and approach, where you're really digging into the nitty gritty of it. Or I love using this metaphor when it comes to transportation. Looking at where the rubber hits the road for all of these different areas. If you have ideas about sort of the process that we've used over the last couple of years and things that really worked well or things that maybe didn't work as well in terms of sort of strategies and approach for our meetings and our conversations, would love to hear more about those. And then, as George sort of chimed in here about sort of how you see yourself sort of moving forward in this, if you do, in this sort of TAC work or NEMT quality improvement work, any of those things. So you definitely don't have to hit on all of those. I just wanted to sort of put those out there in terms of conversation starters or things for you to think about if there's anything else that you want to share in our last few minutes.
This is John. I think as we pass compliments around, you need one too, David. You've been serving wonderfully in your capacity as leadership on and facilitating this whole process. So thank you very much. There's been a lot of drafting that's been involved on your end, and it's been superb.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. All right. So I think in terms of next steps, Rachel, do you have thoughts? And you made some allusions to sort of people expressing interest if they're interested in continuing, how we might do that. If you're looking for additional members for the TAC to join the TAC as official TAC members, any guidance on that part, or will that come later?
Yeah, absolutely. So my plans, of course, is to follow up with folks who have participated in this space for year two on a fairly frequent basis. So I think that's most of us here. But if there is anybody on the list that we've had previously that may have dropped off, I'll probably not necessarily extend the invitation to them. But the folks who have participated continuously in the space will be reaching out to everyone to gauge interest. Already got George's name down, of course. As he said, he's interested in participating. And then, yeah, looking to start back up in October. So we just kind of not going to let things necessarily wait too long. We want to make sure we continue this momentum. So, yeah, I would say probably keep an eye out for an email in the next week or so for that touch base. And then we'll identify how to possibly engage other folks that we haven't had the opportunity to have in that space. Per Jen's question in the chat around CCO involvement, I think that there is a lot more ability to expand where we haven't previously because we want to get more feedback and interest involvement from all sorts of folks that again touch this benefit in all of our unique ways. So we'll be looking at that for again clinics and CCOs, but also stressing, of course, that CCOs are going to have opportunities elsewhere too to provide feedback and such. So they might not necessarily want to agree to this, where there might be more in-depth specific CCO spaces. But yes, to answer that question, we are going to look at expanding opportunities for different types of TAC members. But yeah, hoping to start back again, like in October and we don't miss a beat. And that way we can keep doing the good work that I'm doing in this space.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. All right. Anything else before we adjourn? Going. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate all your work.
David, would you mind
Thank y'all.
hanging out for a minute?
Sure, Leslie, you bet.
Have a good one.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Goodness, stop it.